It is August 2023, and in April of 2022, this was a tightly mowed lawn. And then all of last season, it was a space that was growing trees from seed in air prune boxes with a deep mulch method to be used or being used in between the boxes. And with the deposition of those boxes emptied into this landscape, this is where the boxes were last year. And this was an area that had some other deposition in it, and then some more boxes over there. Now it has transitioned with more mulch, a little bit of weeding here or there, into an incredibly productive, very diverse permanent raised bed system. And I'd like to look at some of the characters that are in here this year. The air prune boxes were in this area roughly last year. And so in the process of emptying them out, getting all the compost out, pulling the trees, we had a nice thick windrow of compost right about here that went down this whole line. And so with the shovel, I split that and made a smaller bed here and a smaller bed here, rough sketch style. And so I'll walk. This is the walkway, little minor divot. There's some lettuces and violets that are growing in the walkway. But now there's two raised beds here. A lot of the characters that are in here we facilitated and added in. These are sea kale. These are rootlets that we had stored warm and moist in our basement over winter. They started to sprout, and now we put in those sprouted shoots, those rooted crowns, and they are taking off through here. They really like rich soil. It's relatively well drained because of all the compost and the wood chips that are aging. And so those are a very major character through here. Our neighbor expressed a lot of interest and pleasure in harvesting sea kale this year. So most of these will stay for his needs, but also be for the nursery and also just for extreme beauty. Some characters here that we did not add in, but we're very happy to have, and so we'll work around, are these red amaranth. There were a few last year. They were quite happy. They dropped some seed. So we're pulling them as needed and sending them to the chickens, but where there's some space for a beautiful tall plant, we are leaving them. So here there's a couple of amaranth volunteers that are currently acting as overstory for rooted seaberry suckers. These are variety orange energy that we're suckering from another production patch, and so we dug them up this spring before they woke up and moved them here. They'll grow for a year or two and become really nice large trees that also sucker. And then we've got some beets that we've added in. Filler, we use annuals as fillers when we have the need for that. And then there's some other fun volunteers. So this is a thornless honey locust, which just showed up in the wood chips. There's purslane, which is a beautiful edible ground cover. So it's an invitation to be a mix between our explicit nursery goals, the serendipity of what shows up from the seeds that were here last year, as well as our needs being met with annual food crops. And then, hey, who's growing? Can they fit there? Oh, wow, we've got some nursery stuff. Oh, wow, we've got some ground cover and really great food. And then we can pull those little dandelions. We probably don't want them to set seed, and that'll be chicken food later. We had some beds here that were extremely locked up with nitrogen. This actually wasn't where the air prune boxes were. This was where a big pile of wood chips was delivered. And I thought, oh, well, it'll grow some crops. But this is that's corn seed that was pushed in to this area on the same day as the corn seed here was pushed in. Those are getting around 8 feet tall and tasseling and sending up all sorts of lateral shoots. They are in aged horse manure and are extremely happy. This is corn and sorghum growing in topsoil that was pulled from a little pond spot. And this is corn growing in wood chips that are definitely not fully aged. It's interesting to see that. A lot of the surface sowing we put in earlier in the season, especially in the dry beginning of the season, did not work. Now we've gotten tons of rains. There's been time for nutrient breakdown to happen, and some lettuce seed heads that needed to be sent somewhere anyway. I scattered them through here, and I'm starting to see good germination and good color. So it feels like the wood chips are finally moving in the right direction. And so we doubled down on that by adding some aged horse compost, which is what was making the corn grow so well. Top dressing with that, letting the rain soak that through, and we transplanted in a bunch of collards and cabbages that have much deeper roots. And so hopefully we'll get some production out of this, but it's a neat example of if you farm in wood chips too prematurely, you can expect extremely stunted, almost red, very slow, sad growth. and then over time it starts to liberate and it just gets better and better. If we did a video update of these 3 beds next season, I bet they'd be amazing even in a drought. But in their first year of being, or second year of being a wood chip pile, you need to do some amendment to make it work. Back to another area that is just so happy to me. This is another line where the air prune boxes were last year. They were 4 feet wide by 2 feet deep with a foot in between them. So I think there are like 6 or 7 boxes through here. You can really see it's like the hint of where they used to be, and now it is nursery crops, and this is really working. I did a fair bit of weeding, more than I thought I'd need to, but we're kind of past that now, and things are just going on their own. There are European elderberries. These were rooted on bottom heat this winter. In fact, so are these northern pomegranates. This is a variety called Kazaski, which is supposed to be a zone 6 hardy pomegranate. They were on bottom heat this winter. They rooted beautifully there, and now they're growing actively. I dumped some grass clippings somewhat coarsely on them, but I can pick that off. More rooted elder, those are pretty easy to get. That's a variety called Ranch. And then there's goji berries and high bush cranberries and some cultivar roses. So these are all cuttings that were on bottom heat, transplanted out, watered a bit through the dry time, and now growing a little bit slowly here, there, somewhat vigorously in other areas, but quite nice. A lot of high value, good diversity. And on this side, pardon the hose, I'm just pleased as I could be with these persimmon friends. These are all seedlings. They were stored over winter in moist sawdust down in our root cellar, cool, moist stratification, and then sown in early May. I would guess it's close to around 100% germination. I don't know, venture a guess in the comments how many persimmons are here. I have no idea, at least 1,000. We'll probably let them grow for 2 years. Maybe what we'll do is dig out little bands here or there in the fall to have smaller first year seedlings, and then give some room for plants to grow a second year. But that's just about the happiest persimmon bed I've ever had. A little bit of weeding earlier in the season. Now they've closed canopy, and so they're good to go. And these are all persimmons from someone locally who found a very, very fat-fruited persimmon that ripened nicely in the fall. And, oh yeah, so these were sown on May 8th of this year. I think the frost happened after that, but they hadn't emerged yet, so that worked out really well. So we've got 2 different varieties of persimmon, direct sown, absolute win. I look forward to collecting seed this fall and filling out other areas because they seem very, very happy here. Here we've got a bed of transplants of perennial kale, Homesteaders Grex from, actually no, these are cabbages, and those are the perennial kale, along with some tarragon, which I'm hoping will be a little bit protective from winter browse. We'll have to see. And then where there was some space, we put in some trombocito summer winter squash to sprawl out. I think I've touched on a fair bit of what's in here. There's so much more. There's New Jersey tea happening in the middle. There's honeyberry seedling experiments. We've got cloning beds of trophy female seaberry, perennial leeks. There's more sea kale throughout. There's other rooted plants that are through here, and some more grain crops that we're experimenting with amaranth and sorghum. For this to have translated from a mowed lawn in April of last year to this level of abundance in the second year is pretty astonishing on its own right. But the fact that we were able to harvest almost 2,000 seedling trees in the process of doing so, because of the fact that the air prune boxes were laid out on the space first. Anywhere that weeds showed up around, we just added hay or wood chips or whatever we could, lawn clippings, we take anything. But the boxes, once emptied, spread out and shaped into permanent beds. More hay as needed where weeds show up, and where there are gaps to add more plants that are vigorous and gregarious. I think this will evolve into a just profoundly productive, resilient space, and all through a pathway of generating trees in the first year, lots more trees, but also food for us, also flowers in the second year. It's a question mark as to what'll happen next, but we'll figure that out when we get there. It just works. Air prune boxes deployed on lawns with deep deposition of mulch is a very winning pathway towards permanent raised beds, in my humble opinion. Thanks for watching.